the biomedical industry, the peak of human technology and origin of life. It is the industry which can turn crisis into opportunity and a world of great changes where present and future coexist. To fertilize Korean biomedical industry and take it further to the world, Korean government established Osong High-Tech Medical Complex. We support the life cycle of biomedical industry from research and development to approval and commercialization. Osong Medical Innovation Foundation, as the most reliable supporter of Korean bioindustry, will help you to make your research results become a champion in the global biomedical market. Osong Medical Innovation Foundation was established to strategically fertilize and support the Korean biomedical industry. Since founded in 2010, Osong Medical Innovation Foundation has grown by securing outstanding research manpower and systematic research support for enterprises. Now, Osong Medical Innovation Foundation is expanding its role for leading the innovation growth of Korean biomedical industry. New Drug Development Center. The companion of global new drug development research supports the development of new drug from candidate discovery to optimization. Medical Device Development Center. A world-class intermediator for medical device development, supports the whole process of medical device production from development of BT-based medical devices to safety evaluation. Laboratory Animal Center. A reliable partner for preclinical tests, supports systematic evaluation of efficacy and safety through various up-to-date preclinical animal models and cutting-edge imaging modalities. Biopharmaceuticals Manufacturing Center. The hub of biopharmaceuticals manufacturing produces non-clinical, clinical, and early-stage commercial biopharmaceuticals in compliance with global GMP. From R&D to approval and commercialization, Osong Medical Innovation Foundation will lead the way to make biomedical industry to be the new growth engine for the future of Korea. Osong Medical Innovation Foundation, the ultimate start of innovation in Korean medical industry.
우리는 지금 새로운 보건의료의 꿈을 세상에 보여주고 있습니다. 국내 제약기업이 연구개발한 의약품을 세계에 수출하고 한국의 의료 시스템이 탑재된 병원이 중동국가에 건설됩니다. 해외 환자들이 한국에서 치료받고 외국의 의사들이 우리나라 의료기술을 배우러 오고 있습니다. 미국, 유럽, 일본 등 선진국들은 보건산업이 세계 경제를 이끌어갈 핵심 전략산업임을 인식하고 세계적인 경쟁력을 가질 수 있도록 국가적 차원의 연구개발 지원과 전문인력 양성 등 보건산업 진흥을 위한 다각적인 지원에 총력을 다하고 있습니다. 보건산업진흥원은 1999년 설립 이래 21세기 국가 경제를 주도할 것으로 예상되는 보건산업의 육성과 보건서비스 향상을 위한 사업을 전문적, 체계적으로 수행해왔습니다. 혁신 신약 하나, 의료기술 하나가 창조경제의 엔진이 되고 대한민국의 건강한 내일을 열기에 우리는 지금 보건산업의 국제 경쟁력을 높이며 국민보건 향상을 위해 뛰고 또 뛰고 있습니다. 보건산업의 싱크탱크, 보건의료 R&D의 서포터, 보건산업 경쟁력을 키우는 파트너, 보건산업의 글로벌 진출을 이끄는 허브. 이름은 다르지만 모두가 한국보건산업진흥원의 얼굴입니다. 보건산업의 정책 개발, R&D, 산업화, 글로벌로 이어지는 선순환의 가치사슬을 만들어가는 한국보건산업진흥원. 창조경제의 신성장 동력 산업으로 부상하고 있는 보건산업을 견인하는 싱크탱크로서 산업 현장의 목소리를 정책 이슈와 연결하고 보건산업 통계 허브기관으로 발전하고 있습니다. 인류가 직면한 각종 질병, 빠르게 변화하는 보건 환경, 보건 의료기술 생태계의 변화, 이 모든 문제를 풀기 위해 R&D 기획에서 평가, 성과 관리 시스템에 이르는 전주기에 걸친 지원으로 우리나라의 보건 의료기술 수준을 한 단계 더 높여갑니다. 또한 의료 서비스, 제약, 의료기기, 뷰티 화장품, 식품 산업을 육성하고 혁신형 제약기업 인증, 보건의료 기술 이전, 보건의료 전문 인력 양성을 통해 보건산업의 튼튼한 경쟁력을 키웁니다. 세계 최고 수준의 의료 서비스와 풍부한 보건의료 자원을 가진 대한민국. 한국보건산업진흥원은 세계가 주목하는 보건산업 시장을 선점하기 위해 외국인 환자를 적극적으로 유치해 메디컬 코리아를 세계에 심어나가고 있습니다. 국가 간 협력체계 구축을 통해 의약품, 의료기기, 식품, 화장품, 의료 시스템 수출 등 보건산업 글로벌 진출에 든든한 후원자가 되고 있습니다. 건강하고 행복한 국민의 삶을 바꿀 꿈의 씨앗. 한국보건산업진흥원이 우리의 내일을 풍부하고 튼튼하게 키워나갈 것입니다.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are, and huge welcome to Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021. I'd like to convey my heartfelt appreciation for your grace presence today. First of all, on behalf of organizer and co-host of the forum, Ministry of Health and Welfare, Osung Medical Innovation Foundation, and Korea Health Industry Development Institute, I'd like to extend our sincere gratitude to our all distinguished guests online and offline here who have taken your valuable time to be with us this morning. And a special welcome to all our moderators and speakers on site in this forum. Now and here, minimum number of participants are seated on site to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And also, we are now broadcasting online. Let me briefly give you some announcement for online participants. Please capture the screen, the broadcasting the forum, and upload the file through the link on Add More on YouTube. For 50 persons joining in this event, gift voucher will be given randomly. And also you can leave any comments, questions, and suggestions on chatting box. For active participation, we are going to give you some special gift for 5 persons. Lastly, the official brochure is available on our official webpage on this forum. Please check and download. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave on chatting box. We will deliver it to our moderator for panel discussion later on. We expect your active participation. Okay, then before we move to the opening ceremony, I would like to introduce distinguished guests briefly. We ask for your kind understanding that we only introduce representative of government and National Assembly and the host, the organizer who prepare for this event, not all the distinguished guests due to time limit. Please welcome them, each of them, with a big round of applause when I call out their name. 네, 한 분 한 분 소개를 제가 해드릴 때마다 함께 자리해 주신 내빈분들을 모두 따뜻하게 환영해 주시기를 바라겠습니다. 네, 오늘 먼저 이 귀한 시간을 위해서 걸음해 주신 보건복지부 류근혁 제2차관님 귀한 발걸음해 주셨습니다. 근혁 류, the second Vice Minister of Health and Welfare, welcome. 이어서 오송 첨단의료산업진흥재단의 차상훈 이사장님께서도 소중한 시간 내주셨습니다. 상훈 차, Chairman of K-Bio Health. Please welcome. Thank you for coming. 네, 이어서 문미옥 한국과학기술정책연구원 원장님께서도 함께 자리를 해주셨네요. 미용문, President of Science and Technology Policy Institute. Thank you for coming. 네, 계속해서 양진영 대구 경북 첨단 의료산업
진영양 대구 경북 Medical Innovation Foundation.
진영 양 대구 경북 Medical Innovation Foundation. Thank you. And next,
금열 박,
보건복지부 첨단의료
Bureau of Advanced Health Technology Policy from Ministry of Health and Welfare.
Ministry of Health and Welfare. Thank you. 네, 계속해서 소개해드리겠습니다. 박홍교.
Next we have 홍교 Park, Director of Strategic Planning Headquarters, K-Bio Health.
홍교 Park, Director of Strategic Planning Headquarters, K-Bio Health. 이어서 한국보건산업진흥원.
Then we have 병욱 최, Director of R&D Department of Korea Health Industry Development Institute.
Korea Health Industry Development Institute. 감사합니다. 네, 계속 소개해드리겠습니다.
Let me continue. We have a Muno Son, Director of the New Drug Development Center from Daegu Gyeongbuk Medical Innovation Foundation.
Medical Innovation Foundation. Thank you so much for coming. And next, let me introduce today's honorable moderators and speakers for panel discussion. Today's moderator, 네, 선경 고려대학교 교수님 함께 귀한 시간을 내어주셨습니다.
We have Kyung-sun, Professor of Korea University Medical School.
교수님 환영합니다. 이어서
Welcome.
분들을 소개해드리겠습니다.
Next are speakers, and we have the Dong-ho Lee, founding CEO of BioDesigner.
Next,
Yong-tae Kim, professor of the Georgia Tech and also founding CEO of MapsGen.
founding CEO of MapsGen. 환영합니다, 대표님. 네, 그리고 끝으로 오늘 귀한 포럼을
Last,
준비하고
we
기획해
have
주신
a
서울
Koo Kong,
바이오이코노미
chairman
포럼의
of Seoul
위원장님
Bioeconomy
소개하시는
Forum
시간
Committee.
열어주셨습니다. Koo Kong, chairman of Seoul Bioeconomy Forum Committee. Please all welcome. Thank you very much for all our distinguished guests who are now participating online and offline. And first, I would like to invite Mr. Koo Kong, Chairman of Seoul Bioeconomy Forum Committee. Please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
안녕하십니까.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. As introduced, my name is Koo Kong and I'm the committee chairman of Seoul Bioeconomy Forum. I would like to thank Vice Minister Lee Kun-hyuk and Mr. Lee Won-wook, along with Ms. Moon Mi-hyuk, the president of STEPI, and all the other distinguished members and staff members. Thank you so much for joining us here today. 4 years ago, right after the President Moon's administration came into office, along with Chairperson Lee Won-wook and Chairperson Kim Min-seok, the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum was launched with the aim of promoting growth in the biohealth industry. And in the past 2 years, we've all struggled from the COVID-19 pandemic that raged across the world. But that has in fact highlighted the importance of the biohealth industry. Bio and health technology, its competitiveness in these sectors are key to protecting the health and safety of our citizens, but are also the future growth engine of our economy. And this was attested to during these past 2 years. And in particular, we will now enter the after COVID-19 world, or the post-COVID-19 era, beginning next year. So as we go back to business as usual and back to a new normal, growth in the bio industry and its importance are going to increase. In line with these changes, at this year's Seoul Bioeconomy Forum, we are going to be looking at startups and academic and industrial collaboration for biomedical innovation ecosystems. Under this theme, today we will be hearing from different speakers, panelists, and experts from both home and abroad to share some ideas and insights. For the plenary lecture, we have Professor Robert Samuel Langer, professor of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We also have founding CEO of Biodesigners, Lee Dong-ho, and Kim Yong-tae, professor of Georgia Tech, and Dr. Johannes Frufov, the founder and president of Lab Central. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor Kyung-sun is a prominent member in the biohealth industry. He has a lengthy experience in the medical sector as well, and it's an honor to have him moderating today's panel session. We'll be going over some startups and some venture ideas and some future directions for the biohealth industry. I look forward to some in-depth discussions and active debates on this theme for today of biomedical innovation ecosystems for startups and academic industrial collaboration. And once again, thank you so much, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here today. Thank you so much.
Another round of applause. It was very meaningful opening remarks delivered by Mr. Koo Kong, chairman of Seoul Bioeconomy Forum Committee. Thanks to your great and valuable speech, we were able to confirm the meaning of today's forum. Thank you. And next, this time, Prime Minister Kim, He will deliver his congratulatory remark by video clip. So please welcome him with a big round of applause.
존경하는 국민 여러분,
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests,
2022 서울 바이오이코노미 포럼
at the outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations on the successful opening of Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021. I would like to thank Gu Gong, chairman of Seoul Bioeconomy Forum Committee, Sang Hoon Cha, the chairman of K-Biohealth, and President Sun Man Kwon of the Korea Health Industry Development Institute, and all staff members for your dedication and hard work in putting together this amazing forum for this year. And I would also be remiss if I didn't express my gratitude to Min Seok Kim, the chairperson of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea's Health and Welfare Committee, and chairperson Won-wook Lee of the National Assembly Science and ICT and Broadcasting Communications Committee for your commitment. My special thanks goes to Dr. Robert Samuel Langer, professor of MIT, and Dr. Johannes Prufhoff, the founder and president of Lab Central, and all the experts from home and abroad for joining us both online and offline, and for taking time out of your busy schedules here today. Once again, thank you, and I'd like to express my very warm welcome to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, the past 2 years have been a battle against COVID-19, and it's been extremely difficult to say the least. During these turbulent times, the biohealth industry served as a beacon of hope for everyone. Drive-through screening centers were set up thanks to the rapid test kits, and accurate testing agents combined with the people's efforts to pull together and remain calm and vigilant during these hard times helped us get through the worst of the crisis and implement successful COVID-19 measures. But that's not all. We are home to outstanding production capabilities and capacities, and therefore are indispensable in the global vaccine supply chain, contributing not only to recovery efforts in Korea but across the wider world as well. Our biohealth industry has become a strong pillar in our society and has pulled us through one of the worst crises in human history. I couldn't be more thankful and proud. However, this success didn't happen overnight by any means. This was the result of immense hard work, sweat, and tears that led to innovation and breakthroughs. As we are slowly but surely edging back to normal, we owe a lot to those in the biohealth industry for their hard work. I would like to recognize the dedication and commitment of all of those working day in and day out, even at this very moment in the field and in research centers. I commend your efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the biohealth industry will be the next growth engine following the semiconductor industry. Countries are already competing fiercely and vying for eminence in the global biohealth industry. Back in 2019, President Moon declared the biohealth industry as one of the 3 new growth industries, followed by heavy investments in R&D and regulatory improvement initiatives in support of the biohealth industry. By 2030, the goal is to achieve $50 billion in biohealth exports and to create 300,000 new biohealth industry jobs. Major new drugs and medical devices. Global market share will also reach 6% during that time frame. As of late, the business sector has dedicated efforts to transform Korea into a global biohealth hub, committing 6.3 trillion won in investments. Such joint efforts by both the public and private sector among like-minded people and communities will surely help us reach our national goal of becoming the 5th largest vaccine producer in no time. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt that we will get there. And on my part, I will put my best foot forward. Let's work together towards this common dream and goal. Once again, congratulations to the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021. And I wish you all the best in health and happiness. Once again, thank you for everything that you have done. Congratulations, and a very big thank you to you all.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause once again. It was a great chance to learn about the real value, the development of biohealth economy industry. Thank you, Prime Minister. And next, it was my greatest privilege to welcome Mr. Won-wook Lee, Chairperson of National Assembly of the Republic of Korea, Science, ICT, Broadcasting and Communication Committee. He will deliver his congratulatory remarks by video clip. So please welcome Mr. Wonuk Lee.
Good morning, everyone. I am Wonuk Lee, Chairperson of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea Science, ICT, Broadcasting and Communications Committee. I sincerely welcome the opening of the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021. I send my deep gratitude to Dr. Kwon, Minister of Health and Welfare, who organized this meaningful forum, and experts from home and abroad who will share valuable opinions in the forum. Bioeconomy is a newly emerging concept which will give a significant ripple effect to our society and economy. This forum will provide an important opportunity for bioeconomy to set a blueprint to move forward and for biohealth industry to take its position as national growth engine. We will listen carefully to insight experts give us in the forum and work hard to actively incorporate them into lawmaking and policy making. Once again, congratulating the opening of the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021. I hope this forum prospers continuously to become a beacon shining light on the future of Korean bioindustry. Thank you very much. Fighting!
Thank you very much, Mr. Wonuk Lee, for sending us these meaningful congratulatory remarks for today. And it was very insightful and meaningful comment. And now, it is now my greatest privilege once again to welcome Mr. Geun-hyuk Ryu. He's here today, and the second Vice Minister of Health and Welfare. He will deliver his remarks. Please welcome him with a warm round of applause.
Hello, everyone. I'm Geun-hyuk Ryu, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of the Wealth and Healthcare. I congratulate the opening of the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum. I'd like to send my gratitude to the Kong-gu, the chairman of the committee, and Mi Yong-moon from the STAPI, and Byung-wook Choi and Sang-won Cha. I'd like to also give thanks to all the participants. I also thanks to the Professor Robert Samuel Langer and the other speakers and the participants and moderators for participating in this forum today. Today's topic is the biomedical innovation ecosystem for the startups and the academic industrial collaboration. Recent 5 years, the investment was almost tripled from the 47 trillion and the 200 trillion, but 2,000 trillion. But at the center of these biohealth industry, we are still in the infant stage of the starting up and making progress. So we need the virtuous cycle of the investment and commercialization and sales. So we have the lab center and the MIT professor in this forum, and these forum's theme and the presentation will give us a great meaning. And our bioindustry will be mature and be an important part. And to do so, your role is very important. So the Ministry of the Wealth and Healthcare will make a collaboration for the R&D and the bioindustry businesses. We will spare no effort to do so. Once again, I'd like to thank your participation in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Mr. Geun-hyuk Ryu. As you mentioned earlier, every participant online and offline today, we can get a great opportunity to broaden our perspective on biohealth industry issues. Thank you. And before moving to the presentation, we will take a short and special time for commemorative photography with the invited guests. 네, 우리 내빈분들께서는 오늘 이 뜻깊은 시간을 기념하기 위해 이제 단체로 기념사진 촬영에 참여를 해주실 텐데요.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a brief photo session, so please come up to the stage.
자장가 연사분들도 함께 무대로
all the panelists and speakers, please come up to the
And
stage.
also Dr. Johannes Freyerhoff, can you hear me? We are now going to take a group photo session with distinguished guests offline here in Seoul. So please look at the web camera closely for the special photo shoot. 네, 우리 내빈분들과 함께 멋진 기념사진 촬영.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now taking the commemorative photo.
네, 아름다운 순간이
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your cooperation. We are trying to capture this invaluable moment to keep it in our memory.
네, 우리 모두 함께 큰 박수를 한번.
Ladies and gentlemen, shall we all give a big round of applause, everyone? Thank you so much. Big smiles, everyone, for the picture. All right, everyone. We are here today at Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021, and the commemorative photo for today's forum is now over. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Please return back to your seats, take your seats, and we will proceed with the next agenda for today.
I really appreciate to online guests for waiting until now. Okay, then it seems that it's time to this forum will begin shortly. As soon as we arrange the session, and please wait for a second. Okay, then seems that we are all ready. So now we are going to proceed with the presentations under the topic of biomedical innovation ecosystem for startups and academic industrial collaboration. A plenary lecture and 3 presentations will be proceeded without break. And after all the presentation, questions or opinions regarding the presentation will be discussed during the panel discussion. First, let me invite this year's plenary lecturer. I am very pleased to introduce you, Dr. Robert Samuel-Langer, Institute Professor of Massachusetts Institute of Technology. His topic is creating and implementing breakthrough technologies. So please welcome Dr. Robert Samuel-Langer.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you. I'd like to talk to you today about some of the work we've done on creating and implementing what I hope to be breakthrough technologies. If I could have the first slide, please. So the way I got started actually was really through basic research. I was working at Boston Children's Hospital, and actually I was the only engineer in the entire hospital with a man named Judah Folkman. And I was trying to develop ways to study blood vessels in the body to figure out ways to stop them from growing. And one of the things that was critical to doing that was having what's called a bioassay, and there was no bioassay at that time. So what I had to do was to develop little microspheres or little nanospheres that could slowly deliver molecules that would affect blood vessel growth so we could actually study them in the body. And that had never been done before. And in fact, everybody that we talked to said that it really wouldn't be possible because the molecules, the substances we were studying were large molecules. And they said, well, whatever we would use to do this, to encapsulate them wouldn't work. It was kind of like a person walking through a brick wall. They were just too big. At any rate, I felt it was important to try to solve this problem. And I worked on it for 2 years. And I actually found over 200 different ways to get this to not work. But eventually, if I could, what we were able to show is we could make little microspheres, and you see a picture of one on the top left. You see one cut in half on the bottom right. So we could make little microspheres or nanospheres. And what we showed on the next slide is that you could actually deliver molecules of almost any size for almost any length of time. Not only were we able to deliver proteins, but this was actually the very first time, to my knowledge, that anybody had ever delivered nucleic acids like RNA or DNA from tiny particles. We published this in Nature in 1976. But when I first got up to present this work at scientific meetings, it was ridiculed. all these, I was a very young guy, and a lot of senior scientists told me that this could never work. In fact, on the next slide, I summarized some of what people said. They basically said that that large molecules like nucleic acids or proteins can't slowly diffuse through solid materials like you saw earlier on those little microspheres and nanospheres. They also said that the organic solvents that I was using would destroy peptides or proteins or nucleic acids. But you know, you have two choices when that happens. You could either give up or you could keep trying. And I kept trying. And it wasn't easy because my first 9 grants were rejected. I'm a chemical engineer, and no chemical engineering department in the United States would hire me. And then when I finally did get a job in a nutrition department, they actually, a number of the people there wanted to fire me. So that was very discouraging. But I'm still at MIT, so things worked out okay. One of the things that Dr. Folkman said to me is that we should file a patent. And Children's Hospital where I was never had a patent. So we filed for one for the first time, and 5 years in a row, the examiner turned it down. And the head of the hospital told me I should give up, but I don't like to give up. And I started to think, how could we convince the patent examiner to allow the patent? And as I told people earlier, people said this was impossible, it could never work. So I wondered, did anybody ever write that down? So in 1982, after 5 years of rejection, I did what's called a science citation search, looking back at our 1976 Nature paper to see who said anything. And the next slide shows one of the things I found. And this is from 5 of the top material scientists in the world. And they wrote, generally the agent to be released is a relatively small molecule with a molecular weight no larger than a few hundred. One would not expect that macromolecules, for example, proteins, could be released by such a technique because of their extremely small permeation rates. However, Folkman and myself have reported some surprising, so surprising is a really good word for a patent examiner, some surprising results that clearly demonstrate the opposite. So I showed that to the examiner. He showed that, I showed that to the people at the hospital. They showed it to the examiner. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I will allow this patent if Dr. Langer can get written affidavits, written statements from these 5 people that they really wrote that. So I wrote them, and they were nice enough to write me back that they really wrote it. And we got, next slide, this very broad patent, controlled release of macromolecules. And with that patent, I got involved in starting companies. And one of those companies was shown on the next slide, Enzotech, which we later merged to form Alkermes. And the first 4 employees of that company were my former students who just really believed in this work. And today that company has 25 products that are FDA approved or in clinical trials. It's led to new treatments for schizophrenia, alcoholism, opioid addiction, diabetes, and they have about 2,000 employees. And the next slide shows pictures of various systems that have been developed by that company and by other companies that we taught how to do this or that licensed our patents. And on that slide, you see pictures of little microspheres that can be injected into the body to treat prostate cancer, endometriosis, schizophrenia, growth hormone, different eye diseases, different types of cancer, and even drug-eluting stents, which are not microspheres, but use these same principles. So now many of those are used, and we got involved in, like I say, starting companies, and we've started quite a few over the years to take technology that I've been involved in and try to bring it to the world. Another example is shown on the next slide. With 2 of my students, Ram Sasakaran and Ganesh Venakatraman, we had developed ways to sequence polysaccharides like heparin for the very first time. And we went public, we got venture capital in 2001, went public in 2004. And what we did with this company, and we've done this with all of these companies pretty much, they're like platform technologies. You can use them for many different drugs or many different diseases. So we gave small pieces of this away to major companies where they would get rights to our developing certain drugs. We'd obviously get royalties and milestone payments, but that enabled a win-win for everybody. So what you see is in 2003 and 2006, we did deals with Novartis, giving them some things. And in 2011 with Baxter, in 2016 with Mylan, in 2017 with CSL. And all this kept giving the company more and more funding, to develop the science. And as you see in 2010, we got the very first biogeneric ever approved by regulatory authorities, which was, and that was actually the largest syringe launch in history. Even though many larger companies tried to do this, at Momenta, we were the very first one. And then Copaxone in 2015 also got approved by the FDA. And in 2020, Johnson & Johnson acquired the company for $6.5 billion. Now, of course, the most famous company we've started is Moderna. And that's shown on the next slide. But the idea there is that protein therapeutics have become huge. But as you may know, there's a central dogma that DNA makes RNA makes protein. And along with Derek Rossi and Ken Chen and Nubar Afeyan, we started Moderna to make nucleic acid or messenger RNA therapeutics. Now, one of the key challenges, of course, is not just the messenger RNA, it's also the delivery system. And once again, the fact that we had made this discovery back in 1970s that you could create nano or microparticles to deliver nucleic acids would come into play, because you have to have a way to not just have the messenger RNA, you have to have a way to protect it when you inject it into the body and deliver it. And so at Moderna, we focused on lipid nanoparticles rather than polymer nanoparticles to do this. The profile of Moderna is shown on this slide. It was founded in 2010 by the four of us. Flagship pioneering, invested some money to get it started. And then we kept raising more funding, like from equity in 2012. And then again, just like with Momenta, we gave a piece away, 40 targets for heart disease to AstraZeneca, which brought in $280 million, plus milestones of another $180 million, plus royalties. And then we gave away certain rare diseases to Alexion to bring in $100 million in 2014, to Merck for infectious diseases in 2015. And then if you go to the next slide, this just continues, is that the first patients dosed in 2016, and we did another big deal with Merck for $200 million for personalized cancer vaccines. And with Vertex, we did a deal for cystic fibrosis. And then we raised more money. We also started building a big manufacturing plant. We could not have done that without the investors. And that started in 2016, 2017, and was finished by 2018, 2019. In 2018, we did a public offering. It turned out to be the largest public offering of a biotech company in history. And today, there's 14 products in clinical trials. We're hiring people right and left. So originally we had 1,300, now there's 1,800. And of course, the COVID vaccine has been approved for emergency use authorization and is used all over the world. A picture of that is just shown on the next slide, the COVID vaccine. And by the way, people may know this, but Moderna, just like myself, was criticized by many scientists. They said, well, this would never work. There was actually a headline in the Boston newspapers with my picture in it saying this is not how you do science. So there was a great deal of criticism about Moderna. Well, of course, all those people turned out to be wrong. Moderna is one of the most successful biotech companies in history. And together with BioNTech working with Pfizer, Moderna by itself, have really created by far the most effective vaccines. And we did it very fast. I mean, we went from getting the sequence was published in China in January 11th. The first patient was dosed just 2 months later. It's just amazing how fast this was able to be done. And that's really the beauty of messenger RNA, because rather than take a protein and make a ton of it and purify it and so forth, you can just make a little bit of messenger RNA, put it in the nanoparticle, inject it in the body, and the body does all the work. It makes all the protein. So you can do this much faster and not have to deal with purifications, et cetera. And you can treat diseases you could never treat before. I thought I'd end the talk mentioning that I've actually had the great pleasure to work with a number of Korean companies and as an advisor, and I just thought I'd highlight a few of them. If we could go to the next slide, I just want to mention MEPSGen, which is started by one of my former postdocs, Tony Kim, and they're doing really exciting work with human cell-based 3D tissues on a chip. They've also developed new methods of manufacturing, and they've developed microfluidic synthesis for manufacturing, and and really very exciting. Alzheimer's is one of the areas that they're working on. A second company that I've been very excited to work with is called gene medicine. That's shown on the next slide. And that's started by one of my former visiting scientists, Cheok, who's just brilliant. And here, the major advance that she's made and the company's made is finding a novel oncolytic virus that can kill cancer cells potently and very selectively. And they've really advanced this work beautifully and are now in clinical trials. They've developed delivery systems and you can inject these systemically. And so they've gotten very exciting results for treating patients with cancer. The third company that I wanted to mention that I've had the pleasure of working with is Genu. And that's also, I think, just a terrific company that I've had the pleasure of working with. And what they've done is that they're about 5 years old, and they have like a whole screening system called Aprobio, and it uses adult neural cells to screen new and existing small molecules for neuroprotective and neuroregenerative effects. And they're actually in clinical trials for treating ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and they're also working on treating Alzheimer's. So I think it's this very, very exciting way of using technology to treat some of the most terrible brain diseases in the world. And I like the company so much, I joined their scientific advisory board. The last company that I wanted to mention, if I could go to the next slide, is Aprobio. And Aprobio is actually in the US and also in Korea. And I thought I'd show on the last slide just the profile of some of the clinical trials and some of what they're doing. And they've done an amazing job. I mean, they are creating new antibodies and they're also creating biospecific antibodies. They have a very interesting platform, which they call a diverse immune, and it generates potent antibody therapies against targets that affect severe diseases. And you can see the whole profile on this slide. You know, they're treating cancer and other diseases. So I wanted to just highlight one thing on this slide, that they've also created this cocktail, that is of monoclonal antibodies. And it really covers all the different variants that are for COVID. So this is could be an incredibly exciting system to treat COVID, if somebody has to go to the hospital or is in bad shape. And they have other ones, like I mentioned, for treating cancer and other diseases. So I wanted to summarize by saying what a pleasure it's been to be able to give this talk. It's also been a great pleasure for me to have been involved in such wonderful companies in the US and now with these companies in Korea as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Robert Samuel Langer. So far, it was plenary lecture delivered by Dr. Robert Samuel Langer. With his great and detailed presentation, many of the participants can learn about the new way of breakthrough technology with this pandemic situation. Thank you. And with this, let me move on to next. I am so pleased to introduce you, Dr. Johannes Freyhoff, the founder and president of Lab Central. His topic is the building innovation ecosystems. So please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Johannes Freyhoff. I'm the founder and CEO of Biolabs and Lab Central, and I'm excited to talk to you today about our topic of building innovation ecosystems. I hope that we will have an opportunity after this recorded presentation to speak together live in a question and answer session. My thanks go to the Ministry of Health and Welfare, who is organizing this conference alongside with the Biomedical Innovation Foundation. Thank you for having me as a speaker, and I hope that our discussion will be helpful in your own planning as you try to establish a strong innovation ecosystem for Korea. And we would love to be able to help you in that and maybe get involved. Now, I have slides prepared, which the organizers should show you, hopefully. We will go to the second slide of my slideshow. It's the one that shows our community of innovators and our spaces, because that's what I like to start with when we talk about what is an innovation ecosystem. It's really a physical infrastructure and it's people, and it's many things that come together. But if we forget about the physical infrastructure, or if we forget about the creation of community, we are missing some very important items. What you see, some of you may have visited Lab Central, one of my labs, and you see a happy crowd of scientists. Of course, this is pre-COVID, and we hope to get back to this again very soon. On the right, you see one of our typical shared labs where we have in one room 30 workstations in this case that are used by 20 different little startup companies. They work side by side. They get access to our facilities, our equipment, our operational support, and that allows academic scientists who are now starting companies or other innovators to quickly meet milestones and become effective. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we do this. Next slide, the slide that talks about the elements of a successful startup ecosystem. I'm showing this slide to highlight that a single intervention will not create a successful startup ecosystem. Many elements need to converge and come together to allow entrepreneurs to build successful companies. We have highlighted the key observations here. We, as Biolabs and Lab Central, can help with some of them, but there are many others that are outside of our control and that require a supportive governmental and cultural environment, for example, that require funding, that require supportive practices from the technology transfer offices, and so on and so forth. Of course, all of this needs to happen in the context of a strong academic foundation, on the basis of a strong academic foundation that creates intellectual property on which to build successful startups. We can help with some of these elements, for example, with space, for example, with capital. We are investing from our own venture capital funds, and we bring with us typically like-minded co-investors to build syndicates, and we can help bring industry support as well. Typically, our labs are built in syndication and in partnership with the largest pharmaceutical companies who have an interest in meeting our startups and in partnering with them. If you go to the next slide, this is the one that is titled Value Creation in Biopharma. It's just an overview, and I'm sure that many of you are well familiar with the concepts that we're discussing here. Healthcare, of course, in the developed world takes up a major part of the GDP. Now in the US, it's around 18%, and it's likely to grow with a successively aging population. They need healthcare solutions. The new inventions oftentimes are created at the universities and research institutions, but not developed there into drugs. This is what the pharmaceutical companies do. They're pretty good at the regulatory path. They're good at marketing and commercializing these opportunities. But the interface between the basic science and the commercialization is where small entrepreneurial companies play a major role and can really create a lot of creativity and value here in the US and really around the world. Most of this activity is funded with risk venture capital. It's important to understand that this is not just any money. This needs to be capital that's provided from knowledgeable sources who can also contribute added value in addition to the dollars and who are tolerant of the high risk profile that scientific startups often come with. Our own focus in this is to create efficiencies in the innovation process. We do this, as I said, through community, through capital, and through spaces. Of course, Boston is one of the entrepreneurial hubs for this, but I think many of the learnings that we are developing here are applicable in other places. I'm going to the next slide, the one that's titled The Outside World. In the past several years, we have observed in a push for many governments towards highlighting the value of the innovation economy. Why is that? Because the manufacturing base for jobs is diminishing. More and more jobs are outsourced to low-wage countries or to automation. And so our societies need to find employment for the workforce, and the innovation economy is one that builds on the strengths of this. So we have often seen a strong political will to support the innovation economy. At the same time, we see societal changes that often facilitate our type of approach, where the sharing economy is a thing that is happening in many places and in many different industries. And there's acceptance of shared offices, shared cars, bike share, etc. And so we think that it is time to apply these learnings in biotech as well. Next slide is the one that's titled Trends in Other Industries. Here we observe that cloud computing, for example, is very prevalent now, of course, in the tech industry, that the lean startup methodology has become quite mainstream in many startup circles. And we've already mentioned co-working and sharing economies. Next slide. It's the one that is titled Translating Trends to the Business of Biopharma. So this is really where we discuss how we have built and how we think that such hubs can be built. They typically do require the active involvement of many stakeholders. And these include government. Government can help through grants and through building easements. It includes industry and other sponsors and non-profits, as well as the entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. Next slide is the one where we highlight the way that we built Lab Central as a model of public and private partnership. On this slide, you see the many fluxes and contributions that were made by different types of stakeholders. You see the government of Massachusetts made a significant capital contribution to build Lab Central. We also received support from a variety of industry sponsors, such as Johnson & Johnson, Roche, Pfizer, Takeda, and many other big pharmaceutical companies or other industry stakeholders. We brought in nonprofits and other stakeholders that are interested in fostering and building a startup ecosystem. And the outcome is a wonderfully productive community of startups that you see at the bottom of this slide. The next slide, it's the one titled Environment for Visionaries to Thrive. This slide shows just a few images for those of you who have not had a chance to visit one of our labs of how we use design and architecture to bring our philosophy to life. And we know that by building transparent spaces, by building science on display, by building very welcoming and highly functional scientific labs, we enable companies to adopt this behavior of high productivity and transparency and collaboration. I invite all of you to come visit some of our spaces to see how we weave design and architecture together to achieve certain changes in behavior. The next slide is the one titled Capital and Time Efficient Startup Model. This is where we show in a rough qualitative graphic, and this is built on experience that I've made with two companies that I was personally involved with, Sequent as well as Boston Heart Lab, where in this graphic we show the traditional model of building out your own space, of buying your own equipment and launching your lab in your own facility, which is very time consuming. You see this on the right axis going many months until companies can reach productivity. And it's quite expensive, especially if you think about the cost of capital for early stage companies is significant. Our biolabs model, which we have also implemented at Lab Central, brings this cost down in terms of time and in terms of capital invested very, very significantly. So many groups can start being productive and launching their first experiments in our space within a matter of days. They have to go through safety training and sort of onboarding procedures, but then within days they can be productive. That can mean a big difference for them and their investors if it comes to timelines, because of course on a venture capital timeline, every month has significant value. Every month saved towards meeting certain milestones has significant value. The next slide shows our nationwide lab network. So here you will see the different cities that we are currently operating in. Of course, we started in Cambridge and Boston, and now Biolabs is present in 9 cities, growing fast around the US. We are the largest network of co-working spaces and incubator labs in the country. We have over 300 companies that use us today, and there's actually quite a bit of throughput. These companies have raised over $15 billion since we started in aggregate, and they now routinely account for approximately 20 to 25% of all the early stage venture capital that's invested in our sector. So if you think about seed or Series A capital invested in the US, a full 25% of that went into companies that are residing in our network. These are the numbers for 2019 and similar numbers for 2020. And that's already my last slide. So I went through it faster than I was planning to. I look forward to speaking with you in our live question and answer session. Thank you for hosting me, and I hope to see you all soon in person. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johannes Freyhoff, for your insightful and informative presentation. We found the specific and detailed data on innovation ecosystem with this time. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce Professor Young-tae Kim, the professor of Georgia Tech and also founding CEO of MapsGen. His topic is MapsGen, a startup in a journey to commercialization on organ-on-a-chip technology. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, allow me to extend my gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to this invaluable forum. And as introduced, my name is Kim Young-tae, and I'm an associate professor at Georgia Tech, and I'm the founding CEO of MapsGen. Well, we go to a lot of these types of forums and discussions, but as a speaker at Seoul Bioeconomy Forum, I thought that talking about my experience with startups and breakthrough innovative technologies and investments would be very pertinent. And so I went through what I wanted to talk about, and I came to the conclusion that I wanted to talk about some of the thought processes that were going through our minds during the startup processes and some of the ideas and challenges that we faced. So my hope is that through the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum, we can help more startups and venture capitals find their way towards commercialization, and hence my title, A Startup in a Journey to Commercialization. Well, I don't need to remind you that new drug development is a very challenging process. As we talked about in our keynote speech as well, talking about your successes is all good and well, but that success requires hundreds and thousands of failures as well. If you look at some data and statistics, you'll be able to see that a lot of investments and research and development costs are going into new drug development, but on a yearly basis, on the effective side, it's not that good in terms of actually translating into new drugs. I have an engineering background, and I've worked with a lot of pharmaceutical companies and the medicine industry, and a lot of engineers who have a lot of experience in this industry. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to offer my expertise and target some nascent areas. So that's how I began my research. I wanted to become a professor, and I wanted to come up with, of course, good scientific findings, but my focus was more on delivering impact and benefits. What would be my role, a critical and essential role as an engineer? Now, what resonated with me the most was this. Let me show you here on this slide. Fail early and fail cheaply. This was my motto of sorts. Of course, you may think that failure is inevitable, but actually the possibility of failure is higher than this possibility of success. So the earlier you fail, the more probable you are in successfully developing new drugs. And this also requires better projections and expectations, which would be a game changer in the new drug development process. So we went over what type of challenges or barriers there are in drug development. Of course, I'm not an expert in this area. There are a lot more experts. But let's say that it takes about 15 years to successfully develop one new drug. This shows the process from preclinical trials up to the end. As I said before, you have to screen all of the candidate materials. Then how do you do this more effectively? This is also extremely important. A lot of the people actually face these types of challenges working in the lab to develop new innovative drugs. So these physical, real barriers that people face and the failures that result from that was an area that I thought should be targeted in the ecosystem. So to tell you some of my thoughts, I don't think that people should be afraid to fail, but there are too many challenges. Of course, it's important to fail and learn and proceed and grow, but I wanted to make an ecosystem with less barriers. In vivo evaluation using animal models is also extremely costly, and there are ethical concerns as well. It's not as much of a contentious area in Korea, but in the United States and other countries, this also takes a lot of time, and it's very costly and brings with it ethical concerns. Of course, as I said before, the cost side is of course there. It's not affordable by any means. And for animal testing, we're doing it not to treat the animals. The ultimate goal is to treat humans. So the new drug development technologies like the drug delivery systems that we talked about, or the CAR-T, and other technologies develop, but the more they develop in the process of the development stage, the more you go towards the end, the target and goal becomes the human. So in this environment, I was talking with my colleague, and we racked our brains around how we can leverage the technology that we have for new drug development and really streamline and make the entire process of new drug development more effective to make an environment and ecosystem more conducive to new drug development from an engineer's perspective. So to bring you back to these steps, the benchtop synthesis process, how to make this more effective, bring about better throughput and yield, and in animal in vivo evaluations, how can we make more precisely controlled experiments and decrease cross-species inaccuracies were some of the areas that we went over. Even if you have the technology, getting it to mass production is a completely different story. So that scale-up process was also something that we also thought about. And what could the microfluidic system do in this process? So this was about 2 years ago. Once I became a tenured professor at Georgia Tech, it's when this process really started. Well, I obtained my doctor's degree, and I studied with Professor Robert Langer, and I was talking with Professor Langer about the challenges and the role that engineers can play to make this more effective. And so our thought process was grounded in the research that Georgia Tech had already conducted. And so I was talking with Robert Langer, and we co-founded MapsGen in Korea back in 2019. In vivo and in vitro experiments, minimization was actually one of our goals, and to do that, you need the important core tissue structure of important organs, put that on a chip, so organ on a chip, and use that for drug screening. So this is our technology. This has been introduced in the academic circles for about 10 years, and a lot of research is needed in this area because there aren't that many researchers in this area. So as a business, it's still a very nascent field and sector. There aren't a lot of startups that you'll see, and one of the biggest barriers would be manufacturing. So on the MapsGen side, we're working on manufacturing to really break down these barriers and challenges. I talked about how we wanted to focus on on bringing about a paradigmatic shift through game changers in each step of the drug development process. So whether it be working with mRNA, so on and so forth, capsulizing it, so on and so forth, that needs to reach mass production and up to standardization. So that is the entire process that we are targeting with our technological developments. As I said before, there isn't a lot of correlation with animal testing. Looking at the bioavailability, there are a lot of differences and discrepancies, and as I said before, cross-species inaccuracies are always a difficult challenge.
기대되는 임팩이라고 하면 이제 왼쪽에서 한 가지 이해인데
On the left-hand side, I think I could tell you about some expected benefits. When this organ-on-a-chip technology is used, what can we do? Well, the impact is better illustrated on the right-hand side. Now, new drug development differs depending on the disease or disability or what is required, but it requires a massive amount of investments. That is why it's a challenging process. So if you look at the new drugs that are being developed, only 1% reach the market. And we do need a lot more efforts made to develop new drugs. So these diseases or illnesses unique to humans, how can we make drug development targeting these diseases more effective? That was always our core view and goal. So innovative technology is all good and well, but there were astronomical barriers, as you can see here on the right-hand side. You have pharmaceutical companies that work with numerous CROs in the new drug development process. And on the left-hand side, you have companies like us, organ-on-a-chip companies. How are they going to build their business strategies and models? Most organ-on-a-chip companies are startups based on universities, and then so they're small in scale, and they work with CROs and pharmaceutical companies. And how can we make this partnership more effective? MapsGen is also working with CROs and pharmaceutical companies, and is partnering with a lot of these companies and organizations in Korea. Well, I don't need to tell you about this, I'm sure, but just to reiterate, startups are supported by universities and industries, so this is just an example of sorts. What I want to highlight here is going to the background of MapsGen's founding. I was working with different experts and prominent professors like Professor Langer, so that's what really got me to think about wanting to establish a company.
어떠한 연구를 하겠다고 제안을 하더라도 그
Now you can
연구를 진행하는
propose
동안
a research
어떤
and study,
분야든
but
어떤 식의
during the
연구 결과가
research
나와서 제가
process, it also depends on what
연구
type
개발
of
주제를
results
바꿔나가면서
you
임팩트 있는 걸 찾아가는
get
거에 대해서
and
그렇게 큰
how you
관여를 하지 않습니다.
apply that
실제로
research
여기
to
밑에 있는
deliver the biggest
탑픽과
impact.
오른쪽에 있는
And
결과는
there
같은
isn't a lot of
맥락이
intervention in
아니었고
that
사실
process. You're
오른쪽에
given
있는
a lot of free
결과를
rein. On the right-hand
저
side,
그랜트를 받을
the
때 프로포즈하진
results
않았어요.
of the research.
하지만 연구를 해나가면서 결국에는 챌린지를
The grant was
극복하고
offered for that research with that
찾아나가는 데
proposal. For
있어서
me, it was
그냥
about
한 장 정도
finding
되는
the
제
most
포커스가 이렇게 바뀌고 있다는 리포트를
impactful
통해서
area
해나갈 수 있었어요.
for this technology. So mine was just a
저는 사실 미국
one-page, very short
교수라서
proposal.
NIH 얘기를 조금 하고 싶은데요.
I wanted to talk
뭐 한국하고
about
똑같이 이런
NIH
어떤
because I'm
많은
working at Georgia
프로그램들이
Tech.
있지만
There are a lot of different
주로
programs like
SBIR,
Korean
STTR 이런 것처럼
universities
이제
offer. It's mostly
연구나
STTR and
이런 것들
SBIR and
상업화시키고 싶어하는
STTR
그런 토픽들에 대해서 이제 얼리 스테이지에 있는
that are
회사들을
conducted with early stage
서포트하는 그런
R&D
그랜트들이 따로 있고요.
businesses
그리고 기술적으로나 경영 쪽 아니면
that offer funding at an
임상을 해야
early
되는 이런
stage and
쪽에
for
대해서도
clinical
되게
trials
많은
or preclinical trials and
프로그램들이
basic
존재합니다.
research. There are a lot of
사실 더
programs
강조하고 싶은
that cater
거는
to
이제
promoting this type of
사실
research.
메이저 컨트랙터라는 거거든요, NIH가. 사실 이런
NIH is the major
스타트업
contractor.
베이커를 만들고 나서
After
그냥
creating
돈만
these startup
투자하고
vehicles,
이런
it's not just
프로젝트만
about
하는 게 아니라
pouring in money and
실질적으로
providing support.
그
It's also
회사가
about
매출을 할
going
수
back to
있게
the
그
basics
회사가
and
마켓에서 어느 정도
helping that
안정적인
organization
레벨이
and
될 수
business
있게
generate a
직접
steady
적극적으로
stream of
나선다는
revenue
거죠.
and really actively being
그리고
involved in that
교육
entire
관련된
process,
트레이닝 관련된
whether it be
서포트도
about
다양한
education and
프로그램이
training
존재하고
as
실제
well. There are a
오른쪽에
lot of
보여드리는
different
거는
range of support systems that need to be provided. So on the right-hand side, this is the impact of the NIH biomedical innovation ecosystem, what types of results that NIH has brought about, and the level and extent of impact that NIH has had.
이거는 이제 제가 생각해본, 그러니까 제가 연구원으로서 회사원으로서 교수로서
As a researcher, as a person
회사의
working at a
CEO로서
company, and as a professor, and as a
제가
CEO of a company,
생각해본 이제
these
각각의
are some of
역할이거든요.
the
실제로
roles of each of these agents in building an innovative
가장
ecosystem.
연구원들이
In the
두려워하는 건
academia and
실패입니다.
research institutions, researchers
왜냐면 연구 결과가
fear
나오지
failure
않으면
because if you don't get the
국가가
research results, then you can't get your
벤처나 이런
PhD.
스타트업들도
So that's a
가장
huge barrier. And for
두려워하는 건
startups as well, of course, once again, it's
사실
all
아까
about failure. It comes down to
말씀드렸지만
failure.
결국엔
They're afraid of failure. But as I said
그런
before,
과정
most
속에서
end up
그러면
failing.
이런
So in
신적인
that
기술을
process,
어떻게 우리가
how do we
꾸준히 계속 서포트할 수
promote and
있느냐.
facilitate the development
실패를
of
두려워하지
innovative
않는
and
그런
breakthrough
문화를 만드는 게
technologies
중요하고요.
when there are so many
그런
failures out there?
리스크를
What
테이크하는
we
거에
do is
대한
we can help
가치에 대한 평가를
people
다시 해야 된다고 생각을 합니다.
be less afraid of
사실은 교육하는
failure. I think that
사람들도
mindset
그런
needs to
쪽으로
be
계속
revamped.
사람들을 하고 있지만 사실
Of
현실이
course,
그게
we
힘들거든요.
always try to encourage
쪽이 되게
creativity and bring in
중요하다고
high
생각을
impact development
그럼으로써 그런 기반성을
and not being afraid of
이런
failure.
초기
But I think
기업들은
really emphasizing that is extremely important. And
오버룩되거나
angel
무시됐던
investors and
임팩트를 줄 수 있는
venture
연구에 좀 더
capitals
포커스할 수 있게 되는 것 같습니다. 네,
will also be able to
정부는
focus
저는
more
아까
on
NIH에 대한 예를 좀 말씀드렸지만
impact research.
아무래도 좀 더
And institutions like the NIH, as I said before,
기술들에 서포트하는 리스크가 많은 하이 리스크 하이 리턴이기 때문에 서포트하는 그런 조금
of
더
course,
융통성
find
있는
it difficult to
그런
fund
펀딩
high
메커니즘과
risk, high return
그
investments and
회사가
projects,
결국 커가는
but it needs to be more
스펙별로
flexible
어떤 배려가 있을지
depending
예상이
on
되기
the
때문에
stage of growth.
그
The
배려에서
trajectory
어떠한
of that
좋은
company and the
프로그램을
barriers that are there
공급해주면서
are
이 나무를
in
펴나가느냐,
some
이게 되게
ways
중요하다고
predictable.
생각합니다.
So catering to each of those stages and to each company's
오늘
nature and
여기까지고요.
characteristics is
제가
extremely important.
오늘 뭐 바이오이코노미 프로그램에
So that brings me to the end of my
바이오메디컬
presentation
이노베이션
today, and thank you so
에코시스템에
much for
대한
inviting me
건데
to the
제가
Seoul
듣기로는 질문이 되게
Bioeconomy
많이
Forum
들어왔다고
to
들었어요.
talk about my
제가
topic about a
다른
startup in a journey to
사람들도
commercialization of organ-on-a-chip
일반적으로
technology. I
이런
heard that
에코시스템에 대해서
there
말씀하고
are a
싶지만
lot of
제가 할 수 있는
questions that
역할은
are
한 가지
pouring in.
교수가
But
수업을
well,
하실 때
as a
겪은 일들이나
professor,
생각하는 바라고
I
생각을
hope
하기
that
때문에
I offered you, and
그런
as a
면에서 이제
CEO,
실질적인
a
예를
businessman, I hope that I
여러분들께
offered you some
패널을
insights and
통해서
implications that
답변을
you can
드리도록
take
하겠습니다.
away
다시 한번 오늘
today
초청해 주셔서
and
감사드리고요.
implement into
감사합니다.
your respective fields.
Thank you
so
very
much for
much,
listening.
Professor Young-tae Kim. As I mentioned earlier, as an academic professor and founding CEO of MapsGen, he shared very insight and detailed information, which is very useful for online viewers about technology commercialization. Thank you so much. And let me move on to next. We are so delighted to have a presentation delivered by Mr. Dong-ho Lee, founding CEO of Biodesigners. The topic is Biodesigners, company builder's role in Korea. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
정말로 이게 코비드-19 시대에 오래간만에
So long time no see to have this kind of a wonderful forum in the COVID era. So I'd like to send my gratitude to the Ministry of Welfare and the K-Bio Health and the KIDI for organizing these forums.
회사에서도 일을 해봤고
I worked for company and for government as the leader of the new drug development team in the government. And back to the academy, I taught the students in the colleges. So I had a lot of experience and experience. And Professor Robert Samuel Langers, he had a lot of experience about building up the companies, but he talked about the breakthrough technologies and creating and implementing the breakthrough technology. So with these 4 words, he described the topic of the Seoul Bioeconomic Forum very clearly, I think. And second presenter, Mr. Johannes Pruhauf, talked about the lab center, which was devised by him. So in Korea, we have a lab center, like kind of the shared labs, which is similar to the lab center in Songdo. We are preparing for that. But today, I want to talk about the biodesigners, company builders' role, taking company builders' role in Korea.
다음 슬라이드로 넘어가겠습니다.
Next slide.
전 세계적으로 정부나
Across the world, the government and the universities try to make a new product for the economic recession and the job creation.
그러면 상대적으로 미국은
Relatively, U.S. has many people think that U.S. has a lot of competitive advantages. However, according to the
대학에 있는 교수님들의
Stanford e-corner,
굉장히 유용한 부분이 있지만
all the
시장에서의 프로덕트로 가기에는
ideas in the academic field is very useful, but there is a limitation to go into the market by commercializing it. I think these quotations describe about that. For the startup, what do we need most? Of course, we have to know to have a knowledge and intellectual property, but that is just the beginning step. In order to make those into the products and the drugs, we have so many challenges and blocking blocks. So we need a team, we need a fund, we need a business plan, and we also need a competitor analysis and a market analysis.
쉽게 한국식으로 말하면
So in a plain term, we say who, what, why, where,
그리고 왜 필요한지는
and
why.
whom.
그리고 어느 시장을 공략할 거냐가 where가 될 거고.
So the market will be where, and the customer will be whom.
무엇보다 중요한 거는
But the most of all, the most important thing
어떻게 할
is
건가?
about how.
가 가장 중요하죠.
How we do this, that is the most important element, I think. On the right side, you can see the NASA's technology readiness levels. Most of faculties in the university, when they think about building startups, they try to apply these TRL for the objective assessment, and they are more focusing on the TRL 1, 2, 3. However, they have to bring these up to the level of TRL 6, 7, 8, 9. In order to do so, we need the support from the various areas, like a team building and the funding, the market situation, planning. All these elements should be incorporated. So just with one element, we cannot make a successful startup. So according to
스타트업은 실패하는가
the
하고
CB Insight,
120군데 앙케이트 조사를 통해서 정리를
this
해놓은 게
survey
있습니다.
shows why
근데 정리를 한
startups
걸 보면
failed.
제일 첫 번째는
According to
오늘
the survey,
적절한 타이밍에 돈이 떨어져서
the number one
슬픈
reason
이야기죠.
was that
적절한
running out
타이밍에
of
좋은
cash at an
아이디어인데도
opportune
불구하고
time.
돈이
Even though they have a
떨어져서
great idea,
망한다
they
이렇게
don't
돼
have a
있고
cash, they
그
fail.
다음에는 이제 뭐
And the next
팀이라든지
reason
이런
was
아까
about the
말한
team
패션에
building
들어갔던 5가지
and other five
가
elements
하나씩
in
하나씩
the
부족하면
previous slide.
망하기 쉽다.
So each of elements are
근데
not
중간에 있는
fulfilled,
거는
it is easy to
리바운드라고
fail.
그랬죠.
But
아까
on the
말한
middle,
대로
you can see the
실패를
picture
용인하는
which says on
컬처가
the
있어서
rebound. They
한
have
번
the
실패했던
culture
사람이
of
그 실패를
accepting
딛고
the
다음
failure. So even
도전을
though they
할 수
fail,
있게
they
해주는
can
우리가 한
stand
10년
up
전에
again
이스라엘 이야기를
on their
굉장히
feet.
정부
We
포함해서 이스라엘
talk
이야기를
about
하는
a lot
사람이
about
없었는데
the. We didn't talk
거기에
that much
후스파라고
about the use case of the
뻔뻔함.
Israelites. The
이 중요한데
Israelites
우리는
say the
너무
huspa, which
동방예의지국이다
is
보니까
like a
한번 실패하면 다시
blazenness.
재기하지 못한다는
We don't have that kind of
그런
thick face. Even though
갈등에
we
시달리는 분들이
fail, we
많으신 것
have
같아요.
to just forget
그런
it
갈등에
and
시달리는 게
stand up
많은데도
again. But we
불구하고
don't do that.
또
So
남과
in
같이
these
협력해서 일하는
conflicts,
부분은
we have to find out how
상대적으로
to
우리나라가
collaborate with others,
소심한 게 아닌가
which
하는
is
그런 느낌을 본부처 사업단을
a
할 때
the
받았었습니다.
competitive disadvantage for the
어떻게
Korean
하면
culture.
성공해야 조금
Then
가까이
how
갈수
can
있을까?
be successful?
그럼 다음 슬라이드를 보죠. 우선 여러분들이 인큐베이터나
So you
액셀러레이터라는
must know about the
굉장히
terms
많이
of the
들어보셨을
incubator,
겁니다.
accelerator, or
근데 이제 컴퍼니
accelerator.
빌더라는
However,
개념은
maybe
지금
the
한
company
15년
builder
전에
sounds
이미 외국에서는 다
unfamiliar to
알려진
you, even
개념인데
though it is
한국에서는
familiar in
상대적으로
the other
드물었죠.
countries.
조금 전에 나온 랩 센트럴 같은 경우는
Lab
인큐베이터의
Center, which was
가장
introduced by the
발전적인 모델이라고 저는
Dr.
생각을 하고
Johannes
있습니다.
Prouf,
그럼
is a
다음
very
슬라이드
advanced
보시면
model
이제
of this
한국의
company
상황이 현재의
builder.
한국
So
상황입니다.
this is a current status of
바이오
Korea.
중소 벤처 기업의 생태계와 인증을
It
받은
is a
사람을 이렇게 비교를 하고
the
보면
comparison
놀랍게도
between the
지금
ecosystem
현재
of
활동하고
the
있는 바이오
small and
벤처
medium
인증을 받은
venture
기업이 2019년에 한
company,
2,000개
bio
정도가
company
있는데
in Korea, and we have
억셀러레이터라고
approved
등록을 하고 인증을
businesses.
받은 데가
So
322곳이나 있습니다.
we have 322 accelerators,
많은
which was
아이디어가 있길래
registered as
우리나라에
accelerators.
억셀러레이터가
We have so
저렇게
many
많은지
accelerators
잘
in
모르겠어요.
Korea. I didn't know about
그다음에
it.
VC 벤처
And the venture
캐피탈에서 지난
capital
3년간 아까
invested
복부 차관님도 말씀하셨지만
For the last
1조
3 years,
2천억 정도의
1.200 billion
바이오 섹터에 투자가 됐습니다.
into the bio
전체 벤처
sector,
캐피탈에 투자한
which
금액의
is
약 30%가
30% of the
바이오
total
쪽으로
venture
갔죠.
capital
제가
investment.
본부처 단장을 하던 시절에 비하면
When I was the leader of the
득세지감이
new
있는 숫자입니다.
drug
그
development,
시절에는 정부도
it is very
의지가
amazing
있는
because
것처럼은
at that time
보였지만
we had a
믿음이
lot of
없었죠.
like
성공한다는
willingness
믿음이.
from the companies, but we
근데
didn't have
지금은
any investment at that time. But now,
성공한다는 믿음이
look at
있는 것
this.
같지는 않은데
We
의지는
don't
굉장히
have
많은
we
시절로
don't
바뀐 것
see
같아요.
the successful
그걸
prospect,
보시면
but
여기
the so
IPO
many
개수가
investments
여기
comes
나와
into
있는데
flows into the bio sector right
2018년에
now.
IPO 개수에서 2019년
As
IPO
of
개수를 보시면
2018,
1년 동안의 IPO가
IPO number
9개
of
정도밖에
IT,
되지 않았습니다.
it was
국내에서.
9 in
바이오 기업의
2018.
IPO가
The
그러면
IPO
저렇게
for
많은
the
돈이
bio
들어갔지만
companies.
어떻게 회수할 수 있는지
But
그다음에
we
맨
have so
뒤에
many,
수익성을 보시면
so much investment in
계속
the bio
마이너스예요.
companies, but we
이런
don't
부분들이
see any
어떻게
clear
극복이 되어야
vision
하는가가
about the
화두가
exit
되겠죠.
plan. So we have to think
제일
about
위에
this
보시면
issue
컴퍼니
continuously.
빌더와 억셀러레이터와
If you look at
인큐베이터가
the top of the slide,
스타트업에
you can
관여하는
see
그 타임라인을 보여주는
the
슬라이드입니다.
timeline of the
인큐베이터는
engagement of the company
엔젤
builder,
라운드
accelerator, and
정도까지
incubator.
도와주는 거고,
Incubator helps
실제로 랩
until the
센트럴도
stage
2년
of the
정도 거기에
angel
있을 수
and the
있고
early
특별한 경우에
before the
연장을
early
해주는 걸로
stage.
알고 있습니다.
And
그다음에
accelerator
액셀러레이터는 대개 시리즈 A 정도까지
helps until
주로
the Series
파이낸스를
A,
도와주고 우리나라
especially
액셀러레이터의
for the
특징은
financing
자금 조달을 주로 도와주고
and
한
funding.
10%나 이 정도의 그 지분을 가져가는 걸로 알고 있습니다. 근데
They
저희 컴퍼니
provide the
빌더는
funding and they
처음부터
receive
끝까지
the
저희가 주도적으로
10%
합니다.
profit. However, the company
교수님이
builder
CEO가 되고
starts from the
그다음에
first stage.
교수님들이 모든
The professor
의사결정을
becomes the
가지면
CEO and they
자기
make
발명품이나
decisions.
자기 물건에 대한
So,
애착이
they have a
자기 자식이기
strong
때문에
affection
냉정해지지
on
못할 때가
their
있습니다. 컴퍼니 빌더의
invention. So
경우에는
it's
그런
their
부분을
like
극복하기
child.
위해서
So
저희들이 메이저
they are
지분을
not have
가지고
like
하는 걸로
objective perspective about their invention. So they, as a company builder, we are helping
스타트업을 만드는 사람들입니다.
the professors so that
그러니까
they
도와주는
can
게
have
아니고
a
저희가
clear mind
아이디어를
about their
사서
invention.
만듭니다.
So we
그다음에
buy idea
같은
and we
모드로
make it
그런
into the
방법을 통해서
commercialization.
연속적으로 스타트업을
And
만들어
we
갈
build
거라고
several
생각하고
startups following a
그래서
repetitive
효율성을
process
극대화하는
so that
쪽으로
we
생각하고
can
있습니다.
maximize the
그럼
efficiency.
우리 바이오 디자이너스는 한국의
Then
드문 컴퍼니 빌더인데
the
우리가 뭘 해줄
biodesigner
수
is a
있는가?
company builder. So
일단
what can we
여기에
do
뭐 앞에
for
나왔던
the
픽스,
Korean
셋마니, 네트워킹,
people?
인포메이션 이런
So
걸
we
다
have
뭐든지 해드리겠습니다. 이렇게
we can provide
만병통
everything
치약처럼
from
말을
people,
하고
asset,
있는데요.
money, networking, information,
저희가
what you
지금
need.
말씀드릴 수 있는
But
부분은
the thing I'd like
같이
to emphasize
창업하신
is that
창업을 같이 했던 파운더는 파이낸셜 섹터에서 오셨습니다. 그다음 저는
we have two
학계와
founders for
정부
our
쪽 일을
companies.
쭉 하면서
One,
많은
the other
과제들을 본
co-founder
상태고
is from
그다음에
the
본부처 때 저희들이
university,
다른
and I'm
정부
from the
과제와 달리
government. And
했던 거는 전문성을 우선했습니다.
we
공평성을
have
우선하게
the
하는 게
expertise.
되게 우리나라
We put the
R&D의
expertise
방향인데
first.
저희는
Mostly the
공평성을
Korean R&D
무시하고
put
전문성을 우선으로
the
심사위원 포를 짜서
traditionality,
운영을
but
했습니다.
we
그때 한 400명
see
정도
the
신약 개발의 각 분야의
expertise
전문가가
first
같이 일을 했기
to
때문에
see, to
지금
find
저희
the
바이오
right company.
디자이너스에도
So in the
그분들과
bio
그분들
designers,
후배들이
we
같이 일을 하고 있다고
have so
생각하시면
many staff who are working
신약
professionally and
개발이라는
with their
섹터를
great
보면 이렇게
expertise.
단계별로 저 밑에 까만
For the new
글씨가 있는 것처럼
drugs,
그렇게 많은 전문가 서로
we
다른
need
분야의
so many
전문가가
expertise
그때
from
들어가야 됩니다. 근데 한
all
회사가
different
저
ranks
모든
of the
전문가를
field,
채용해서
so that
쓸 수는
we
없습니다.
cannot. However,
그래서
we cannot
저희들 풀에서
recruit
이런
all
분들을
these
제공해 드릴
experts.
거고
So, sorry,
그다음에
the companies cannot
단계별
recruit all
본부,
these kind of
시리즈 A,
experts
시리즈
in
B
their
이렇게 할
companies.
때
So we can
이번
provide the human
미국의
resources
벤처
pool
캐피탈들이 주는
with
돈은
their
항상
expertise,
원 스테이지의 돈을 줍니다.
and we
그래서 fail 패스를 가지고 한번
give the one
스테이지에서
stage
원하는
money
결과물이
to
나오면
see
다음
the fail
스테이지에
and the pass
저희도 지금 그렇게 할
and
생각입니다.
move to the next round.
그다음에
So that's what
오퍼레이셔널
we do too.
엑셀런스를 추구하고 있고요.
And we pursue the
그다음에
operational
네트워킹과
excellence
콜라보레이션. 한 사람이 어떤 과제를 하는데
and the networking and
이분한테 이런
collaboration.
분야에서 도움이
So
조금
when
있으면
one
그러니까
people
만약에 약을 개발하는
work
분이
in
있으면
one area,
델리버리 쪽에
they need
아이디어를
the
붙여드릴 수도
idea
있고
or the
이런
help
코업하는
from the
일을
delivery
저희 컴퍼니 빌더들은
or from the
해드리기가
other
쉽습니다.
area. So we provide a
이게
co-work and the
저희들이 만든 첫
collaboration.
번째
This is
회사입니다.
the first company we
저희는
built.
그 소싱을 국내에
We
한정하고 있지 않기
provide
때문에 첫 번째
sourcing
회사는
from home and
UT
abroad.
사우스웨스턴 메디컬
So the
센터의
first
Center
company
for Genetics
was
of Host Disease라는
the Center for the Genetics of Host Defense, University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, the Professor Bruce Butler. He won the Nobel Prize
그래서 저희
for the
이뮤노디자이너스와 뷰틀러랩 그쪽 랩에 저희가
mechanism.
1년에
So
100만
to
불
this
이상의
lab,
연구비를 드리고
we
디스커버리하고
give
노블 타겟
$1
디스커버리는
million
그쪽에 가지고 있는 포워드
invest.
제네틱스라는 뉴 타겟을 찾아내는
And
일을 하시고 그
for
뉴
genetics
타겟에
try
대한
to find out the new
디벨롭먼트는
lead,
저희가
and
설립한 이뮤노디자이너스가
development is
합니다.
made by the
그리고
immunodesigners, which was built by us,
저희
and
이뮤노디자이너스라는
the team
자회사의
of the Bruce
20%의
Butler
지분을 가지고 가십니다.
have the 20% of shares of the immunodesigners, company immunodesigner. Usually in Korea, just a 10% the share, but
본인 팀들이 20%,
he wanted the 20%, and we have the 80%
innovation,
of share.
inspiration, better together. 이게 제
So
생각입니다.
the innovation, better together, inspiration, better together, that's our core values. This small acorn seed can grow into these big trees. So we see the potentials for the investments. As I experience in the government, even though we try twice and three times,
지원했던 과제들이 5년 차에 팔려 나갔습니다.
we wait
그동안은
and see until they
교수님들에게
grow,
15년쯤
even though it
걸린다고
takes
했는데
like
저는
5
그렇게
years.
생각하지는 않습니다.
The professor said it takes 15
단계별로
years
거래가 이루어지는
for
시장이기
making
때문에
companies, but
5년
this is
정도면
the
충분히
phase of
리턴을 가져올 수 있다.
development
하지만 최대의 효율성을
use
필요로
market.
한다 이렇게
So
생각하죠.
we need a
그래서 제
long time.
생각에
It's true, but
이제 저희가
we
하나는
pursue
시작을
the
했고요.
efficiency.
사실 좋은 뉴스는 바로 옆에 있는 이 건물의 바로 옆에 있는
Next to this
산업은행으로부터
building,
저희가 시리즈 A로 100억을 받았습니다.
we received
저 자회사에.
10 billion won
그리고
as a the
밑에
Series A
써놓은
fund
것처럼
from the industrial bank.
어떤
So
프로포절이나 우리랑 같이 일하겠다고 제안을
if
해주시는
you
거는 저희는 언제나
give any
지극히
proposals,
환영합니다. 그래서
we will
나눠드린
welcome.
책자에는 없지만
all
발표
the time.
자료에는 제 개인
So,
전화번호와
On
제
this
이메일을 넣어놨으니까
presentation,
이게
I
유튜브로 중계가
wrote down
된다고
my
하니까
email address and my personal
많은
mobile
분들이
phone.
저희를
So I think
방문해
this
주시기를
forum is
기대하면서
streamlined
오늘
on the
발표를
YouTube. So
마치고요.
I expect
이런
your
좋은
contact
자리에
and calls.
발표할
Thank you
기회를
very
주신
much for giving me this
모든
wonderful
수고해 주신 분들한테 다시 한번
opportunity
감사드리면서
to
제
speak
발표를
my
마치겠습니다.
presentation.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then thank you very much, Mr. Dong-ho Lee. He shared motivational experience and data as a company builder. So hopefully, many of you viewers today for this forum can set up the new vision to be company builder in near future. Thank you. And this is the end of the presentation session we prepared, and we need some time to arrange the platform. So please have a seat and wait for discussion. With this, let me briefly give you some announcement briefly. And please capture the screen of the broadcasting today's forum, upload the image through the link below on Add More YouTube page. For 50 persons joining in this event actively, gift voucher will be given randomly. And also, our official brochure is available on the web page on today's forum. Please check and download. And if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave any comment on the chatting box, and I will deliver it to our moderator and panelists. Okay, great then. It seems that we are all ready to start the panel discussion. This session will be delivered on the topic of the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021, entitled Biomedical Innovation Ecosystem for Startups and Academic Industrial Collaboration. And so, okay, then they are ready to be seated. And Professor Kyung-sun, Professor of Korea University Medical School, will be today's moderator for this panel discussion. Also, today's speakers are now discussing the issue under the topic of this year. 네, 우리 성경 교수님 좌장님으로 함께 해주시겠고요. 김용태 대표님과 이동호 대표님도 함께 자리해 주셨습니다. 네, 신속한 준비에 감사를 드리면서 그럼 이제 여러분들 함께 또 한 분을 모셔야겠죠. Dr. Johannes Freyhoff is now here online. Please come in front of the web camera for discussion now. 네, 감사드립니다. 이제 좌장님께 마이크를 넘겨드리겠습니다. 시작해 주시죠.
I'll now hand over the mic to the moderator.
네, 소개
The floor is
감사합니다.
yours. Thank you for
우리
the kind
바이오스
introduction.
산업이
Our biohealth
IT 시대를
industry
대신할 포스트 IT 시대에 대한민국의 경제 성장 동력
will be the
하나로
new
분명히
growth
포지셔닝을
engine
하고
and
있습니다.
is one of the
오늘
big
중요하고
three new
훌륭하신
future
교수님들
growth
많이
engines
모시고
for Korea in the
발제를 잘
post-IT age.
들었습니다.
It was
그리고
amazing
사전
to hear
질의를
your
통해 가지고 굉장히
presentations.
많은 좋은 질문들이 많이
And we
올라오셨는데요.
also got a lot of really good
기술적인
questions
부분은
here on
나중에
our comment
개별
section. The
접촉을
technical
하셔가지고
questions are going to be
대답을
covered
드리시면 좋을 것 같고
in more
저희들이
detail
앞으로 남아있는
through
시간,
individually
짧은
through
시간
emails
동안에는
or however we can get to you.
에코시스템, 생태계 구축하는
But today we're
것과
going to be
이노베이션,
talk more
혁신에
about
대해서 한번
ecosystems
포커싱을
and
해보도록
innovations.
하겠습니다. 저희들 남아있는 시간 중에
For the
처음에
remainder of our time, I would like to
연자분들이
give
간단한 그
some time to each of our
발제
presenters,
부탁을
3
드리겠고,
minutes to each of our
뒤에는
panelists to sum up
필드,
their
그리고
presentations.
사전 질의,
And
그리고
next,
유튜브를
I'm going to
통한
go
사전
over
그
the
실시간 질문에
questions
대한
that we've got on our YouTube comment section and the ones that we have prepared beforehand, and I'll be asking you to answer them.
제가 보니까 랭거 선생님은 발표를 하고 안 나오셨는데 랭거
Professor
선생님께서
Langer,
지금
the keynote speaker, is not here with us in the panel session, but I see that we have questions delivered to Professor Langer as well, so I'll be delivering them later on.
한국과 미국의 연구 환경이 많이
To Professor
다른데
Langer, the question is the
연구자에게
different
조언을
environment
해준다면
between
어떤 조언을 해줄 수
Korea
있겠는가?
and the United States
제가 이
is quite
질문은
stark.
우리
So what
김용태
could we do
선생님이
to
아무래도
bridge
랭거
this
선생님하고
difference?
같이 또 근무를
I think
하셨고 하니까
since
간단하게
Professor
좀 얘기를
Kim has
해주실
worked
수
with Professor Langer, I think you would be a bit more apt to answer this question. Please go ahead.
교수님이 저랑 같은 의견을 발표하시지 않을 수 있는데.
Well, Professor
제가
Langer might have a
경험한
different
거를
opinion from
저는
me, but based on my
사실은
personal experience,
한국에서
especially working in Korea. Well, I worked at a big conglomerate in Korea for 7 to 8 years before getting my PhD. So I didn't live in the United States from when I was very young. I went quite late. At 31 years of age, I went to get my doctor's degree. So I worked a lot in the corporate business in Korea. So different cultures between the United States and Korea, especially in the research field, of course, was an area that I personally experienced as well. I said in my presentation, I alluded to this in my presentation as well, but I think that it all comes down to whether your fear of failure. Of course, no one loves to fail, but it should be okay to fail because you need to realize that the possibility of failure is actually bigger than the possibility of success. To make research and studies a bit more innovative, I think is really helped out by that mindset that it's okay to fail. And that mindset is underpinned by a culture that allows for that. I think that a mood needs to be set for that mindset to be a bit more open as well.
결정함에 있어서 되게 무서운 거거든요. 그래서 그런 게 사실은 이노베이션이라는
You shouldn't fear failure. You shouldn't fear making decisions. As the definition of the word innovation
거기에 대한 에코시스템이라고 생각을 해보면
inherently states, innovation is all about trial and error. But in the United States, well, this comes to the difference that I felt. In the United States, I feel that failure wasn't that much of a big deal compared to Korea. The feedback that the professors gave us, the encouragement that they gave, helped me overcome my fear of failure. I worked, as I said before, in Korea in a business for about 8 years, and I did my master's in Korea and then my doctorate in the United States. But my experience in Korea for my master's, if I didn't get the results and if I didn't do good, if I didn't get my performance, and then I was always fearful and I was afraid of going to meet my superiors, my professors, but that wasn't the case in the United States. And Professor Langer emphasized this. I mean, he was always busy, so I couldn't see him every day, but he always emphasized and underscored that you should be different. Always pursue research that has impact. It's okay to fail, but your research has to have impact. Don't try to be like anyone else. That's what Professor Langer said. Okay, thank you so much for your answer. Could I ask you one more question since I have you here? When you were working with Professor Langer, based on your experience, what do you think sets Professor Langer apart? Could you answer this question, please? I think I can answer this question in 2 parts. Well, of course, each professor is different, and right now I'm working as a professor as well, and of course I'm going to have my different styles and my different perspectives, but all doctoral students and master students that we have in the lab, it's quite a large group. So leading that group within the university and within his department is no easy task. Researchers always need to look at the impact that their research and studies have. That's what he always told us. And so that has remained with me and stuck with me throughout these years. And I believe that that may have been one of the driving forces, one of my main philosophies as well, that really motivated me, what I got from the United States and during my time there, to leverage that and create a business. And so I always tell everyone else, don't do what is easy, don't follow everyone else. Thank you so much for your answer. Next, I'm going to move on to Professor Philosopher.
So, the Dr. Pro Health, you are the MD and PhD. So you are the physician and scientist. So between the collaboration between the MD and PhD, what's the most important thing?
Thank you. I think it's very valuable to have physicians engaged in drug research. Physicians have a prescriber's perspective of what the patients may need. Oftentimes, when I'm in discussions with my friends and colleagues, as we are all embarking on this journey of inventing new drugs and developing concepts to become hopefully products that will cure patients, I often realize how the perspective of having worked as a practicing physician gives me additional viewpoint, additional perspective for some ideas that might be more useful or less useful. As you know, I also run a venture capital fund, and we see many ideas that may be fantastic biological ideas or concepts, but in reality, they should not become companies because there's not a product for them. There's not a market for them. So I find it useful to have both perspectives, both the ones of a basic scientist as well as ones of a prescribing physician around the table. By the way, as we have heard, the path to developing drugs is often very long and is littered with failures along the way. And so it is important to understand that all successful drugs have to be developed by very diverse teams. It's not a single person, it's not a single qualification that will make a successful drug. Very rarely have individual geniuses invented a drug and then developed it to become a product. So it's very important, I think, to keep in mind that in each of these stories of successful drug development, we have to involve large teams of experts who will look at these problems together from very diverse points of view, from a basic science point of view, from a prescriber point of view, but also formulation, also reimbursement, who will ever pay for this drug, also policy, how does this fit into the national environment. And so I'm a big advocate for bringing many different viewpoints to this topic of drug development. And I think my own background prepares me well for that.
Thank you very much. So the diverse attributes and multi prospect is important, and I'd like to praise your leadership to incorporate them all together. I'd like to ask you one more question. When we have an ecosystem for the bio businesses, everybody imagine that they can enjoy the comfortable environment. So when we have an incubation and green glass, and we have a different idea for the ecosystem. So what is the difference between the business for the ecosystem and business for the incubation?
I think, I don't know that there's a real difference between the two of them. We see that successful innovation depends on so many different factors, and that's what we call the ecosystem. We take this example of the rainforest, that is sort of the ecosystem of nature, in which many natural systems have to collaborate to make the whole machine of nature work. And we see that the concert and the collaboration of many stakeholders support the innovation pathway. As I tried to describe in my presentation, we have observed that this is very helpful in helping scientists become entrepreneurs and helping scientists become successful drug developers. Because even though many of our founders may be deep experts and world leaders in their scientific respective fields, there are many other skills required to bring their ideas to a successful outcome. And there are many other resources required, such as capital, certain infrastructure to do the work, access to talent, etc. And so that's what we like to describe as an ecosystem. Now, I know that the government is part of your conference, and I want to call upon the government to play their role as enablers of an ecosystem. That is not really a business. That is providing infrastructure and environment. And then the ecosystem evolves from many different stakeholders playing together with the intent of enabling innovation in these geographies.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
자연계에서의 생태 시스템은
So the ecosystem in the nature that is
구조를 만드는 것
a stronger fit and that makes the strong the food chain, so which is a little different from the incubation. I think the Lab Central is a non-profit organization.
우리
So, Dr. Prohauf, when you make this kind of non-profit organization, what was your expectation?
So, as you know, we have two different organizations. One is Biolabs, and that is a for-profit business, and one is Lab Central, which is a non-profit business that we have spun out of the Biolabs organization. We did that because in Massachusetts at the time, there was a funding mechanism available. It's called the Massachusetts Life Sciences Initiative, created by our governor, Deval Patrick. And they were able to support investments into the life sciences industry, but they were only able to give these grants to nonprofits. When I discussed with that agency our idea of creating a large shared resource for innovators in Massachusetts, and I was already running a small version of that through Biolabs, they really liked the idea, but they couldn't fund Biolabs to do that. So that's why we created a nonprofit in Lab Central. Lab Central's mission is limited to Massachusetts. Because of that, Lab Central will not grow outside of Massachusetts. And as you saw on the slides that I was using in other states in the US, we are building the same network through our Biolabs brand. And we are now in this month and in December expanding for the first time into Europe as well. So that's the separation between the two. The business models overall are very similar. The intent, in fact, is very similar. Our mission for both organizations is to support innovators in the development of life-saving new medicines. And we see advantages as well as disadvantages in each of the models, and we try to optimize through the learnings that we draw from running both models.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
프로하프 교수님이
Dr.
영리법인과
Prohauf
비영리법인
runs
통해서
the profit organization,
부자가
non-profit
되시도록
organization. I hope you
성원을
can be
드립니다.
very rich through this kind
이동호
of
교수님께 질문
activities.
하나 드리겠습니다.
My question goes
우리
to
이동호 교수님은
Dong-Woo Lee
사실은
this time.
의료계에서
So Dong-Woo
어찌
Lee
보면은 대단히 선구적인 역할을 해주셨습니다.
is a frontier in the medical sector, making businesses, and he also ran the public organization, government organizations, and he also ran the new drug development part of the government. However, he is hesitating for the professors to open their companies, but even in that
말씀
aspect,
주시기
despite those kind of aspects, why did you encourage the professors to open the businesses? I don't think I'm not discouraged. I'm not discouraging the professors. I just say that they shouldn't do it alone on their own. And the Dr. Prof, the Lab Center also talked about it. Idea and the products cannot make with just a single expertise. So they have to recognize it, that they have to be ready to open to other people. However, the professors and the experts in Korea have a little difficulties in collaborating with others under the Korean culture. So if you have an open mind, if you have the willingness to collaborate with us, we will minimize your risks. Because you said you are afraid of the failure. So you can maintain your academic career, and the risk will be taken by the company builder who is working for you. So I encourage the making the business, establishing the business. Okay, that was what I thought too. So when we build the ecosystem for the bioeconomy, the Death Valley is a very important. The recovering from the Death Valley is very important, and there is a very important organization which is clinics and medical staff. So what is the role of the medical center, University Medical Center, in the building the ecosystems? And what can we utilize the staff? So Dr. Prof, you are the MD and the PhD together. So to make a startup ecosystem, what's the role of the medical center, the university hospitals? What is the role of the university hospitals in building the ecosystem for the bioeconomy?
Dr. Sun, you're asking me, right?
Yes, right.
Yes, right.
Yes.
For you.
Thank you. The role of the academic centers is very essential. They play an important participation at the front end as well as at the back end of medical innovation. For example, in Boston, we see that most of the applications for space from innovators who want to start the companies with us are coming out of the local medical ecosystem, out of the local teaching hospitals or medical research institutions. That's because people are close to new biology, to the discovery of new understanding of disease processes. The hospitals, of course, play a key role also in the later stages of the drug development process as we go through clinical trials. It is very useful to have access to key opinion leaders who are clinicians treating certain indications, and then to have them involved in the planning and ultimately in the execution of the clinical trials that lead up to the validation and eventually, hopefully, to the approval of the drug as a concept. So, in fact, we have seen our most success with the Biolabs network in those cities where we are located very near the medical universities and the medical research institutions, because that proximity between clinician and innovator, and then the ability to build entrepreneurial ventures is really helpful. People are fluid and play different roles between those different
감사합니다.
Thank you very
그
much.
사실은 병원과 임상사의 역할이 굉장히 중요합니다.
Well, clinical
아이디어를
studies
내고
and university
또
hospitals
연구
play
과정에
an
피드백을
extremely
드리고
important role. They come up
임상시험을
with ideas,
거쳐서
they give
온
feedback, they
시스템까지
carry out clinical
통과하고
studies. It also
마지막에
needs to
최종적으로
pass
구매자의
the
역할도
screening and
같이
the
하고 있기
insurance system,
때문입니다.
and it also plays a
그럼에도
role on the
불구하고
consumer end side as well.
한국의
So
경우에는
despite that, in
이
Korea,
대학병원의 역할이
the
또
university
임상의사들의 역할이 좀
hospitals and the
미흡합니다.
clinical
이 부분에
academic
대해서 우리
institutions' role
이동욱
isn't quite
교수님 경험
strong
많으실 텐데
yet. So
대학병원에 좀
regarding
조언을
this, I would like
해주신다면
to
뭘
ask
해주실 수
Professor
있을까요?
Lee about your opinion. What recommendation could you give?
사실은 본부처 사업단 단장으로 나갈 때
Well, when I became the chairperson, my role was the director at the clinical center at Asan University Hospital. And in the phase 2 and 3, or late stage clinical studies, were carried out by principal investigators, and I was able to see all of that, what went on as the director. The biggest difference between university hospitals in Korea and the United States is that in Korea, the clinical workload is extremely high. Of course, that may be owing to the difficulties that we face, but of course this also has benefits in terms of recruiting clinical study patients. So young medical doctors should be involved in this process of global drug development trends so that we can catch up. And we need a system that creates this opportunity for us to grow and develop, but we don't have that in Korea. As an assistant professor, I participating in the IREB review and deep research and studies. If these young researchers can really think about this more in depth, I think that new ideas can be generated a lot better, because the clinical studies across the world, through an IRB documentary review, looking at the investigators' brochures, allows you to review all of that. So once you get that intelligence and knowledge accumulated for about 5 years, then more ideas can be generated. You know where the unmet medical needs are. You get a better gauge of what research needs to be conducted. But unfortunately, in Korean university hospitals, we don't have that type of ecosystem and environment that provides this type of opportunity to young medical doctors. And the focus is solely on carrying out the clinical studies. So that infrastructure for us to go to that next level, that next chapter is not there yet. But compared to that in the United States, I'm not an expert about the environment in the United States, and I've never done clinical studies in the United States, so I'm not sure. But in the United States, the key opinion leaders who aspire to be key opinion leaders in clinical studies and those who want to actually be more on the treatment side and doctors are a bit divided. But multinational companies, R&D team, and clinical study teams approach clinical study researchers because they believe that they are the best way to recruit clinical study patients, and that's sort of unfortunate. Well, thank you so much. So the executive committees and the administrative boards at university hospitals do need to do a bit more work to improve this environment, but we are making some progress. I talked about how there is a very vast and deep death valley out there. How can we get across this death valley? Well, there are 3 major government projects. One is research-oriented hospitals, and number 2 is headquartered research development, and last but not least is the innovative technology industrial complexes,
바이오헬스 산업의
which is
생태계를
on the
구축하는데
hardware side. So
우리
creating
천복 사업에
the
첨단의료
innovative
복합
technology
단지
ecosystem,
사업에
these cutting-edge industrial complexes
역할이 어떤 역할을 해야
play
될지
a very important role.
우리 필드에
But what
계시는 두 분
exactly
이사장님께 한번
is their role? I
간단하게
would like to
코멘트를 좀
ask
부탁드리겠습니다.
our 2 CEOs who
어떻게
are working in
오송의
the
차상훈
field.
이사장님 먼저 하실까요?
Shall Mr. Cha
마이크 좀
start?
갖다 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 천복 사업이 가지고 있는 정체성과 또 해야 될 미션,
So
또 앞으로
identity
포부 이런
and
거
the
이 두 이사장님께
mission,
부탁 좀 드리겠습니다.
can be shared by you.
네, 오성첨단의료산업진흥재단 현재 네 번째로 책임을 맡고 있는 차상훈입니다.
So I am the
두 번째
chairman
책임을
of
맡아주셨던
K-Bio
성경 교수님께서 아마
and
소회도 많으시고
professor
관련돼서 여러 가지 아이디어가 많으시기
have
때문에
many
저에게
ideas,
그런
so
기회를
that's
주신
why
걸
maybe
생각합니다.
you gave the opportunity to talk about this.
저보다도 더 많은
I think
의견과
all of you have the better opinions and the ideas, but let me give you the several comments because I have opportunity. So the K-Bio Health
대구 경북 첨단의료산업진흥재단과 함께
is working with the
똑같이 해야 되는
Daegu Gyeongbuk Medical Innovation Foundation, but we have the separate mission. In 2005, we made the Innovation Center, Medical Innovation Center, and from 2005, and it's been 10 years since its establishment.
15년에서 20년 전 계획입니다.
But the plan was made from the 15 years ago. But looking back, during the last 15 to 20 years, the bio industry dramatically changed, and we had a great expansion in Korea too, seeing all the resources moving around. So, is it valid that 20 years ago, the planning 20 years ago is still valid? That's what we have to see. Maybe we have the new idea and the new suggestion from the government so that we can pursue our original intention to foster the bio industry in Korea. It can be a new North Star for the Korean bio industry to move forward. So the K-Bio Health, we have the bio new drug and the cell therapy and the medical device supporting team. Based on the biotechnology, we try to support the biotechnologies. And we also tried a new attempt. However, we have a synthetic and the metabolic engineering, and we need the response to the advance of the new mRNA technology so that we can actively be prepared for the future technology.
양진영 이사장님도 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Thank you. Next to Mr. Yang from Daegu.
예, 대구 경북 첨단 의료산업진흥재단의 이사장 양진영입니다.
Good afternoon. My name is Yang Jin-young, and I'm from the Daegu Gyeongbuk Medical Innovation Foundation. I was sort of caught off guard, actually, so I'm not sure how I should answer. But, well, I think a lot of what I have to say is aligned with what Chairman Cha just talked about. If we go back to, rewind 15 years, 20 years, we've created a platform that has allowed us to grow in leaps and bounds. And so in 2020, we were at a point where we need a new paradigmatic shift and a new direction, and we needed to adapt to the new changes in time. So we are going to continue to cooperate very closely to make this happen. Now, moving on to something a little bit different. Well, 2 months ago, the new drug candidate technology transfer project that we had going on, which was worth about 80 billion won, came to fruition about 2 months ago, and our foundation was actually a joint agent in the research there, and we also were able to get some royalty fees from that as well. So it was a very good news and quite a success and accomplishment for us. So once again, I would like to, hats off to you, and we are going to carry out more in-depth discussions, and we looked at where we could be of assistance. And I found that, surprisingly and interestingly, those employees who worked at our foundation were going out to actually start their own businesses. And I was actually thinking, I actually said, why didn't you come up with this brilliant idea when you were working for us? But, well, anyways, in that line, I do believe that the role of a foundation is not that of, I think, a player when it comes to soccer. It would be more of the role of a coach or a guide, a person that guides people through what they're doing. So when it comes to our future direction, I think this is definitely an area that we do need to think long and hard about. But as I said before, we are working on projects and partnerships for startups and projects that can assist our players in the soccer field, so to say, how to train them better, how to support them. These are some areas that we are working on, and we have achieved some successes that have been quite meaningful. So moving forward, we will try to build on what the successes that we've achieved, and we will continue to come to these types of forums to share our core competencies with each other, share ideas, and promote startups in general. So once again, training and skills development, I think, are some areas where we can be of help. And I look forward to coming to a lot more of these types of forums and conferences. Thank you so much for giving me time to speak. Thank you so much. We heard from the two foundations, and congratulations to all of what you have achieved in your respective foundations. The cutting-edge industrial complex vision or goal of establishment is overcoming this Death Valley. So our researchers and the public should be able to enjoy the prototypes that we have already developed at an affordable price. And this is the goal and the role that these cutting-edge industrial complexes have to play. If we fail in allowing and promoting the role that they have to play, then we might fall, victim to this Death Valley. Directly developing technology and directly developing new drugs on their own is not the role of these industrial complexes. Of course, we need to make ceaseless efforts. These industrial complexes are there to support and be an accelerator or enabler of sorts. So I would like to leave that message with the government. Now we talk about another very important thing when talking about the biohealth ecosystem establishment in Korea. The government's efforts and initiatives are extremely important. Government policies, government tasks, and government projects need a control tower, and that control tower is key to what we're talking about. If Ms. Moon, president of STEPI, were here, I would like to address this question to her. But since we do have some staff members who have a lot of expertise from the Ministry of Health and Welfare, I would like to address the next question to Mr. Choi, the director of the R&D department from the Korea Health Industry Development Institute, to talk about this question.
Hello, I'm Byung-wook Choi, the director of R&D department of the KIDI. So, Professor Kyung-sun was my predecessor, so he must understand very well. So that's why he gave me the opportunity to talk about. So today, we discussed a lot, and the most important thing is that innovation and the innovative technology should be incorporated into the ecosystem. And we have the famous and the prestigious speakers from the US and shared their story. And I envy you a lot, because the biohealth and the R&D need the budget. And when we invest such amount of money, we wonder like how much result we get, outcome we get. But we need to have the system to assess the result, and the result should be the innovation, innovative. However, the professor said that it is okay to fail. So this kind of innovative philosophy should be placed first, I think. So we cannot accept all the failures, but we have to try hard to make the culture to accept the failure more often. So without this, I think the innovation will be very difficult. So in order for this innovation can work in the ecosystem, we need the investment in the R&D and the investment in the culture. We have a very many organizations scattered around, but we need to collaborate to build an innovative ecosystem. Then we can have a healthcare R&D result, which is very successful, just like the Moderna. Thank you very much. Next, back to the panelists. We have a question to the Yongtae Kim.
Why did you establish a company in Korea when you're working as a professor in the United States? Why was that? And the second question is, if a Korean biohealth company were able to go global by establishing its roots in Korea, what would be the key success factor? Well, to answer your first question about why a professor based in the United States would start a business in Korea, I have to go a bit more personal. I have to talk about some personal background. Well, the organ chip technology that I'm working on is actually led and pioneered by Korea. Most of the experts and researchers working on organ chip technology in the United States are actually Korean researchers working in the United States. And every 2 years, I lecture at Georgia Tech, and I ask looking at the startups there are about 100 startups for organ chip startup companies. And among them, there are only 10, a very small handful, who are actually actively doing business, and that you can actually call business in New York, Boston, California, and Korea. These are the places where you can find these 10 organ chip companies. So I decided on Korea because it's the mainstream place, it's the hub. And another aspect was, the reality of things, because in Korea, the mic scale and the microfabrication and MEMS technology and production capabilities are quite more advanced in Korea. And because of the mass production challenges that we face on organ chip technology, leveraging what Korea had to offer was quite nice. Now, I actually failed on a molding chip process that was worth about $50,000, and in Korea, that I succeeded in that project in Korea with just 8 million Korean won, so a substantially lower. And another thing is about, what would you recommend to these types of startups, which was your second question. Well, there are 3 very important places in the United States: Boston, where Stanford is, and also in Europe and the Netherlands and Korea. In these 3 regions, they have the startups for organ chip technology, and these are the mainstream areas. And to give you recommendations, you must establish branches in these areas. Now, the beginning isn't everything, but being in there within that mainstream and being a part of that flow is extremely important, especially in helping you overcome the myriad of different barriers and challenges that I talked about in my presentation. Thank you so much for your answer. I heard that there's a similar company in the United States. What differentiates you from the company in the U.S., or how are you partnering? We have a MepsGen lab in the United States, which is a Georgia Tech startup. And the MepsGen Korea is more targeted toward the Korean market, and the one in the U.S. is more targeted toward the U.S. market. And when we established this company in late 2019, and that was right before COVID-19 hit, so we couldn't really do anything. Our hands were tied. But in Korea, the COVID quarantine measures were quite successful, so we were able to make some progress. But ultimately, the MepsGen US and MepsGen Korea, and also we're also working on branches in the EU where it's mainstream, as I talked about. And yes, the MepsGen Korea is a bit more developed and active right now. Thank you so much. Is Mr. Kim Yeon-chul from the Ministry of Health and Welfare here? Do we have him here? Okay, I see him here. Then could I ask you this question?
So we have the various grant from the KIDI. Do you have any support for the ecosystem building? Hello. We have the 5 departments in the R&D department, 5 areas. And then there is one sector which supports the ecosystem. Representatively, the research-oriented hospital is the very representative, the supporting project for the ecosystem. Many the clinics make a profit to run their hospitals. However, the 1% of the elite students in Korea apply for the medical school in Korea. So the doctors should work more harder to extend their horizontals, their perspective, not just like practicing the physicians, but also to the research, so that we try to make this health hospital as the research-based hospital. That's the main goals. So the holistic support, when holistic support is made, we can bring in the innovation. When we talk about innovation, usually we talk about technological innovation, but actually, as the Dr. Prof said, the biohealth industry should have a gathering of like a team, all the entrepreneurs, investors, and the university, research institute, and the government, and all the organization. All these elements should get together. But the problem is that there are conflicts among them, because they have a different definition about success. Like investors and the professors, researchers, and hospitals, and the government public officials, they all have a different definition of success. So it is natural to have a conflicting the interest inside. So for successful building successful, we need the communication skills and the leadership. So we have to grow the innovator, not the inventors, when we have such kind of ecosystem. So we have the Dr. Prohoff and Professor Langer today. So we learned a lot about the leadership from you. We still have the very interesting questions coming in continuously, but I'm the moderator who is a timekeeper. So we'd like to close the session with this, and thanking all the speakers and the panelists together with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all our distinguished moderator and speakers on and offline for leading great discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, then this officially concludes the Seoul Bioeconomy Forum 2021. On behalf of organizer, the Ministry of Health and Welfare, co-host Osung Medical Innovation Foundation, Korea Health Industry Development Institute, we'd like to thank all of our distinguished guests and online viewers for your precious time and effort in participating in this forum. We strongly believe this forum will be a great momentum for further development of bioeconomy in Asia and beyond. We look forward to seeing you all again next year in Seoul, face to face. Have a great day. Thank you.